Hey, it's Deja. So today I want to talk about the Club Shay Shay and K Michelle interview. So normally I don't watch Club Shay Shay interviews because Shannon Sharpe honestly gets on my nerves a little bit. But every now and then, he'll have an interview that goes viral. So even people that don't normally watch him, they'll kind of tune in a little bit. That happened with the Cat Williams interview, with the Monique interview, and then also it's happening right now with K Michelle. So a couple of the clips they are going viral. So I know the one about her kind of talking about Real Housewives, and then also where she was talking about her relationship. That was the one that really went viral. And then a little bit about the one with the Memphis situation because she was mentioning LeBron. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead. I'll sit down, watch the full interview, all 2 hours and 59 minutes of it. And honestly, the interview it was entertaining. K Michelle, she's a very entertaining person. When she speaks, even though it is bird brain, like she just knows how to speak and like entertain. So I did like the interview, but K Michelle definitely was honest in the interview. And as even as somebody that watched Love and Hip Hop Atlanta back in the day when I was younger, like there were still things that I learned about her from this interview that I genuinely did not know. Like I didn't even know that she dated R. Kelly. I knew she worked with him, but I didn't know she dated R. Kelly. I didn't know she used to be a stripper. That one kind of took me for. Cause I'm like, was I watching, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta? They're basically the same thing now, but I didn't know that her father was an professor of African American literature or studies or something like that. Didn't know that. Um, Honestly, the way that she speaks and the way that she like talks about stuff, I can see it, but I did not know that. And I didn't know that she had her son when she was in college. Like even her being like Miss FAMU, I didn't know none of that. So it really was a good interview because it even as somebody that knew about K Michelle, knew her music, like even before she got on the show of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, it just kind of like made me understand her like a little bit more. As far as K Michelle the person, not what she's doing on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Just let me clear that up. But I definitely think that a lot of people they connected to it. I was looking at the comments and a lot of people were saying like this is the Cayman show that we're used to, like this is the Cayman show that we really like. So I really wish that she could have been that on, Real Housewives of Atlanta. But anyways, so the conversation, it was with her and Shannon Sharpe, and I will just say a couple moments in the interview Shannon Sharpe was just kind of like getting on my nerves just a little bit because especially with the first two major conversations that they had. So one was about K Michelle and LeBron. So K Michelle, she did mention it a little bit earlier. She was like in the conversation, she was saying, in Memphis we have more stuff than just hotels. So that was about LeBron, where he was saying like, I don't like to stay at the hotels in Memphis. I don't like to stay in Memphis. Like it's just not somewhere that I like to stay. He was being very anti-black when he said it. K Michelle, she did mention like some of the stuff that's going on, like with the data centers and like how it's like economic racism towards the black people that live in Memphis, which is it's a predominantly black city. But LeBron was just saying like he doesn't like to go to like I think Detroit. He doesn't like to go to Milwaukee, Memphis, stuff like that. And he was talking to white men on their YouTube channel while he was like playing golf. So it was very, very anti-black, the whole situation. LeBron, he did come out and he kind of spoke about it. He was basically like, well, I don't like to say that. What you want me to say about it? People that were dragging him, and K Michelle was one of them. Rightfully so. And another part of the conversation where I really agreed with her was the Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Man conversation. So, if you know K Michelle from Living Hip Hop Atlanta, which I don't think that maybe Shannon Sharpe had did his research on this part, K Michelle was in a very physically abusive relationship with a man of hers, and I think he was married at the time, or like there was something going on, but that man literally kept her music from being shown to the world, and she was like, I felt like I didn't have a voice, and she was saying that to Rashida on Love Hip Hop Atlanta, and I remember it because Rashida was very stale faced when K Michelle was explaining to her the situation. Shiesty is currently sitting in jail right now because he allegedly ran up on Gucci Man and was like, "Give me sign this paper. I want out of this contract." And a couple of Pooh Shiesty's people were allegedly unscrewing Gucci Man's earrings. So when they started talking about the conversation, K Michelle, she was saying like, I don't agree with how he did it. I don't agree with him pulling a gun out. But also like this is how I feed my family. This is how I do what I need to do. And you are taking advantage of me. You are. Pooh Shiesty got out of jail and had one of the biggest records. Come on. Like Gucci Man is making all the money on the back of this black boy, and it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And those deals that, people like Gucci Man, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj tried to do it, but it didn't work out for her. They do these like really exploitative deals with young black artists that are trying to come up, and they see like, oh, this is my favorite artist, I look up to this person, like let me sign to them. It's never a good idea because they're just as exploitative as the record labels that the artists prior to them, like Beyonce, Jay-Z, Gucci Man, Nicki Minaj, that they were saying that was exploiting them. So it's just like this endless vigorous cycle. And that's what K Michelle was saying. She was just like, I don't agree with it, but also, I mean, like, I don't necessarily agree with the full scope of what he did, but also, like you can only push someone but so far. And it's not the first time that an artist has been, that something like this has happened to an artist in the music business. It's just not. Shannon Sharpe, he was just kind of saying like, oh, well, I don't really agree, with what I'm not saying that I agree with what he did because it was just kind of wrong or whatever. And but he was just kind of saying like, well, would he have done that like running up in the Sony building? And Kim Show was like, well, I ran up in the Sony building. Like that's something that I did. I went up to the receptionist desk. I told her what happened. She let me through, and they told me that look, the police gonna be coming. So she was saying like, I didn't literally run up. I didn't do what he did, but the police were called on me because I was felt like I was being done in my record label in Sony. So it's like this is like, even though Shannon Sharpe is a basketball or a football player, you were exploited in that as well. Like it just really is frustrating, that the fact that he just couldn't take himself out of that for a moment. But I do agree with what she was saying. She even said that she liked the way that Pooh Shiesty writes, that he was a really good storyteller. So she wanted him on her record, but that couldn't happen because I think he was in jail at the time, but he still could have sent a verse. But he was in jail at the time, and when he did get out, he was trying to get himself out of that contract. So I think that she, in the nicest way possible, was like, I work with Gucci Man, and I don't want to say anything rude to him, but also I understand why that young man did that, and that's just really the truth. So another really big conversation, and this was the main reason why the whole interview was going viral, was because K Michelle started talking about her relationship with her husband, and she definitely lost me at this point because when she started talking about her marriage and her relationship dynamic, the interview it stopped sounding like an empowering situation, and it started sounding really sad. She basically explained that her and her husband can sleep with other women as long as he tells her beforehand or he lets her know everything that they did. And she was like, well, me and my husband, we've done everything, every choreography and everything that there is to do. So he's not going to be doing anything new with her that he hasn't done with me. Well, he'll be sleeping with her, and that is new, something that he can't and ever won't ever do with you. But okay. Um, and she was kind of presenting it like, we're honest, like we tell each other everything, we can survive everything together. But honestly, it just didn't sound healthy. It sounded like somebody trying to emotionally convince themselves that they're okay with something that still deeply hurts them. Because even throughout the whole interview, K Michelle still sounded very clearly hurt by betrayal, infidelity from past relationships. And if I heard correctly, I don't know if she said she cheated, but I think she said that her husband cheated, like the one she's currently with. I don't want to say that for sure, but it sounded like she said that he cheated on her. So, like hearing this and like the way that she describes her marriage, it just put me in a mindset of like she's thinking a piece of a man is better than no man. And I know that some people they say like ethical non-monogamy exists, but it definitely does. But ethical non-monogamy usually involves like structure, boundaries, emotional security, communication, and maturity from everybody involved. And what K Michelle is describing sounds more like my husband does whatever he wants, and I just try to emotionally survive it. If I'm being completely honest. And like even when they went to the courthouse, you can read it how you want to read it. I read it as like either he was very tired and she drug him up there, or he just didn't want to get married. Maybe he just don't like being on camera. That maybe is what it is, but he just looked like he was being dragged there against his will to me. And honestly, like the relationship conversation started making a lot of sense once the interview moved into the conversations about abuse, the toxic men, and the type of men that K Michelle consistently defends. So first is gonna be R. Kelly. Like, but this was probably the most frustrating part of the interview for me, because K Michelle has openly talked for years about abuse, the cheating, manipulation, and the humiliation and toxic relationships that she's been in. But at the same time, she still struggles to just plainly say certain men are wrong. When R. Kelly conversations come up, she immediately started like fin straddling. And I'm sorry, but at this point, like, why are we still saying allegedly? Like, R. Kelly is a convicted abuser. He is a convicted abuser. Like he's gone through this dance of like, oh well, I think before now he did, before this sentence he did go to prison before. But even with that, it's just like the amount of accusations that have gone on. And this is for her and this is for Portia, like they're, well, really for her, really for Portia. But like this man has been in the music industry. He's had all these allegations of like peeing on young girls, of having inappropriate relations, like marrying young Aaliyah when she was like 15, 14, and sleeping with her. Like all of this has been going on around his name, and y'all still choose to be around him. Like for K Michelle, it is kind of different because sometimes you really can't, if you want to have your career work out, you really can't choose who you sleep with. I mean, not who you work with, because R. Kelly was a really big hit maker in the R&B space. So I do understand where it's just like I was put in a room with R. Kelly and he made a hit and it worked, and then I kind of went back. I don't think that it is an excuse, but I can kind of understand that. But her saying that, yeah, I was in a relationship with him, even her being in a relationship with him, like that is your coworker. Like, was it you or somebody that was trying to get on, not somebody that was just trying to get a song from him, or somebody that was already on and y'all were really like neck and neck or level or anything like that. Even if it wasn't a level set thing, it was just like you were completely below him. Just like, where's y'all relate? Just like with Portia, like, where's y'all relationship? This situation where it was consensual all the way through, because Portia's was not. I know that Kelly threw it on her face, but Portia's actually wasn't. She was just saying like she felt like she did what she needed to do to get up out that room, even though she went back multiple times. But we're not gonna talk about that. But like R. Kelly is a convicted abuser. I don't know why she just can't say that. And it just like frustrates me consistently with people that are just in celebrity culture, even when it doesn't come to R. Kelly. People will acknowledge the harm right up until it's time to say, you know what, this person, they did something wrong and that this is not okay. Then it suddenly becomes just like with K Michelle, like, well, he was nice to me. I never saw that side. He always helped me, even though one of her songs, though I love you and I care about you, but you just keep hurting me. I just can't do this as my song. But he wrote it. But she was saying in an interview like he was she was telling him like, I care about you and I love you, but you just keep hurting me, you just can't keep hurting me. And the man literally sang the lyrics in her face, because he has this thing where it's like you're supposed to make music from hurt, and that's where the true artistry comes from. And he sang those lyrics in her face, but I'm like, he was hurting you so bad that you had to tell him that, and this man still sang in your freaking face. So although maybe it was just emotional abuse, but he was abusing you. Okay, he probably cheated on her. And then in the middle of K Michelle and him and Shannon Sharpe talking about R. Kelly, Shannon Sharpe just randomly brings up Chris Brown and Usher tour, and she was like, "Oh, I'm just so happy for them." And of course, K Michelle, she starts, you know, put a cape on. She put that motherfucking cape on. And she started flying, and she was like, "Oh, he's very nice. Anytime that I ever needed something, when we had a song to do, I sent him stuff over. He sent it right back over. He's always really good to work with." And I was like, girl, like, you have openly talked about abusive relationships and harmful men for years, but you still emotionally defend the same type of men. And it's crazy, like publicly too. Like, honestly, I think that the contradiction says a lot about where K Michelle still is emotionally. Because throughout the interview, she honestly sounded like somebody who has not fully healed from the things that she's been through. And I think that that became really obvious when she started talking about like the surgeries, the insecurity, and how she viewed herself physically. So one thing I will give Kim Michelle credit for is her honesty throughout this whole thing. I said it earlier, but even when it came to her talking about her surgeries and everything, she was very honest and open about it. Um, but she has had a lot of surgeries. She has health complications that we even saw on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Almost dying, spending years not feeling comfortable in her own body, which is just really sad to hear. And honestly, like that part made me kind of understand her more, because a lot of the chaos in her relationships and her self image clearly comes from somebody who has struggled deeply with insecurity for most of their life. The bleaching conversations, I still have mixed feelings about it. From what I remember, K Michelle looking like, she does look a little bit lighter, but even with Beyonce, she put on a blonde wig, almost a white wig, and she looked like she was bleaching. So we don't really know these people to say for sure. Um, so I won't just say that, yeah, she was bleaching, but she did have a good point. Like, if I admitted all the surgeries and the fillers, like, why would I lie about bleaching? And I understood her point. But, colorism and anti-blackness, they are complicated conversations. Like, you can understand, black history, because she was saying my dad is a black history professor. He's more known in Memphis than I am. So what do I look like bleaching when my dad is who he is? And also, like, I've told y'all everything else, but you can still do all of that and still struggle with your self-image. And you can, come from these really educated black households, and you can still have internalized anti-blackness, and still have Eurocentric beauty standards that you hold yourself to, even though mentally, like, if you were to say it out loud, it would sound crazy. Like, I don't want to look like a white girl, I want to look like a black girl. I love black people. But you can still have that mind frame and that mentality. So I just really hope that she learns from that. Something also that she said was, she was saying like, oh, I like chocolate women. I'm always attracted to chocolate women. So how could I, not like that in myself? She said this on Real Housewives of Atlanta too. I think that she was so curated on Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I'm like really trying. I'm not really trying, but I'm really seeing like the dots being connected. Um, because yeah, like, I just don't understand why that was something that she needed to say, and something that she even needed to say on Real Housewives of Atlanta. So she did also talk about just not being, you know, comfortable in herself. And she said like she's still trying to figure out who she is emotionally, but she started liking the way she looks at 43. Like, I'm finally starting to feel comfortable in my body at 43, which is such a sad thing to even, be able to admit. Well, it's a good thing to be able to admit so you can work on it, but just to know that. But like, when some people are just like really insecure for most of their lives, like they really start trying to find, validation through all kinds of like their relationships, and the surgeries, and like constantly trying to reinvent themselves. And I can't see that with K Michelle. I think her personality stayed the same, but I think that her constantly needing like fillers and surgery, I think that was you know I think that they kind of stayed the same. But other than that, she did talk about the Real Housewives of Atlanta. So she talked about Portia, not Portia. She talked about Angela and Pinky, and she was like, "Yeah, I really like Pinky. I really like Angela." And that was just kind of it. I don't. She kept hinting at Real Housewives, so I think she wanted to talk about it, but Shannon Sharpe didn't ask her much about it. And then she started to talk about. He asked her at the very end, "Who would you want to do a versus with?" And she said, "Well, I want to do a versus with." And then she said, "I really want to do a versus." And he was like, "Oh, who would you do it? The Muppet." If you know, you know. She's talking about Tamar Braxton. People were saying like, "Oh, when Tamar Braxton comes back and she blah blah blah, let her, let her come back." People are also saying that K Michelle wouldn't win. Do you don't know K Michelle? K Michelle has hits that stick like grits. I listen to K Michelle. Maybe I should call almost every single day. Speaking of maybe I should call, um, it was about Idris Elba. I think the whole album was about Idris Elba. They had a relationship. He got somebody pregnant. They broke up, and she was just saying like, he's just a really good guy, and she really liked him, but he did her dirty. Girl, this nigga shit on you. She didn't want to say that, because he is married now, and you don't really want to reopen like old wounds when he done clearly moved on. You married, you moved on. But she was saying how really wrong it was that people like what's his name, Charlemagne, was like, kind of saying like, "Oh, he didn't date you because you too hood, you too this, you too that." When I tell you, there is going to be a documentary that comes out about Charlemagne and all the harm that him and the Breakfast Club has done, and now they moving to Netflix, and everybody unsubscribing from Netflix because of that Michael documentary. I'm like, why? But if if this is what's gonna change stuff, then okay. But okay. But other than that, Kim Michelle, she did have, so that was basically the end of the interview after she talked about the versus situation. But she did talk about on another interview, Real Housewives of Atlanta specifically, because she did like a round of press tours, and she was saying, me and no, she was saying, F Portia. Like Portia apparently dated her ex, and she was like, "Well, I would have sang at y'all wedding or whatever." I'm like, "What ex is she talking about? Is it Robert Kelly? Is it Robert? Because if it's Robert Kelly, I'm gonna lose my stuff game shot. I'm really trying with you, but girl, I'm gonna have to lose my shit." But I don't think it was Robert Kelly. But I did notice on that bus when she said you slept with R. Kelly and he was married. She was like, "Whoa, you slept with who? That was my man. Okay, that was my man, baby. I still claim him." And she also said the woman she asked her about Portia, F Portia, and then on another part she was asking her, how do you feel about why were you saying that people were plotting on you? She was like, because they were. And she was like, okay, well, is this something that you noticed? She said, I noticed stuff, but I was told. Kim Michelle said she was told that somebody was plotting on her, and then she started noticing stuff. And I think that might have been like the comment about like the fish or whatever, or the oysters. I think that's when she started kind of like putting pieces together, even if it wasn't about that. But also like what happened with Kelly. Like Portia did kind of dig her own grave because you came or you had Kim Michelle sitting there and she witnessed you in real time slander somebody, so it's like, of course, no matter who told her that, which I feel like it was the producers, she's gonna believe that, so I don't know if she was being plotted on. I don't know what happened, but I can definitely see the producers. I think they're still truly original. They messy as hell. I can definitely see them doing something where they, just made her think that or told her that, just to kind of get the party started a little bit. It's not okay because she also is a grown adult and she'll take accountability for her own actions. But I will just say overall, I did like the Shannon Sharpe interview. I don't know if she will last on Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I don't know. But if you did watch it, just let me know how you thought about the interview with Shannon Sharpe and K Michelle. Do you think that her marriage is a good one, like she kept saying in the interview, or do you think that she's just kind of settling because she doesn't want to be 50 and not married? But I'll talk to y'all in the next one. Bye.